the fancy crowd are the ones that are going into brand new, like, hey, I'm in a brand new apartment in Frisco or a brand new apartment I don't know,
Plano, Frisco.
Plano, like what a brand new complex. But as a multifamily investor, you're buying and rehabbing or renovating. You're not. I mean, do you ever get in developments at all? Or is
I
that
have
like,
not yet. I have not yet.
Is that something you want to do?
Potentially.
Okay.
Yet. But how are you seeing rents perform in the assets right now? And second part of the question, are there certain markets you see it going better or worse in?
Well, so I'm in, all of my properties are in Texas, mostly DFW. So in DFW, Irving is still getting bumps. Fort Worth submarkets, those are the ones I'm most familiar with. We're still getting at least 5% annual increase on rents, not 10 to 12% like a couple of years ago. And that's without upgrading anything.
Right.
So we're still seeing the rent increases, but there's got to be a point where the tenant base can't afford them anymore. And I think we're pretty close to
And
that.
you said classic units. And for Ryan's edification, what's a classic unit in your mind?
Untouched, unrenovated. So there's some room to update and charge a premium.
So kind of like they built it in the 90s and it's still kind of the same Formica countertops and ugly fixtures and all that.
Well,
please.
on that note, because we talk about inflation, we talk about the economy, and I know even in single family, it's like it used to be like, hey, let's go to the nines because you have to. When the economy is where it's at, do people start skimping on stuff just because they can? Because even if it is built in the 90s, because I know a lot of people that have an apartment and they get in their apartment and they're like, it's never been updated, but it still rents.
Well,
So how do you make those calls?
So what I've noticed, especially some of the C-class properties, a lot of the tenants, they don't want an upgraded unit. They want the cheapest one you have. So the more that's been happening, we've been dialing back on maybe we don't need to spend that much on renovations at the moment.
Now, does that decision come from like empirical data, or is it just anecdotal? Like, hey, I'm in the business so much that this is what we're seeing.
That's exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and it sounds like, knowing Dallas-Fort Worth the way we do, because we live here and we've been buying houses here for 20 years, that Irving, Fort Worth outer bands have always been more kind of working class neighborhoods, right? And that rent pressure is probably greater on them than others. So it sounds like that strategy really works there, right? You're not in Deep Ellum trying to attract the fancy crowd, right? These are just people that are trying to take care of their family.
Yeah, because like the fancy crowd are the ones that are going into brand new, like, hey, I'm in a brand new apartment in Frisco or a brand new apartment I don't know,
Plano, Frisco.
Plano, like what a brand new complex. But as a multifamily investor, you're buying and rehabbing or renovating. You're not. I mean, do you ever get in developments at all? Or is
I
that
have
like,
not yet. I have not yet.
Is that something you want to do?
Potentially.
Okay.
Yet. How is occupancy? I've been seeing a lot of reports. So, in full disclosure, that one deal that had a capital call, that's not my only multifamily deal. That's just the only one that's bad right now. So, of course, I talked about it.
Right.
But I have a lot of good ones. I have a lot of good commercial things that I've invested in that are working out well. Maybe you could talk a little bit about projects you're involved in that are working well, and maybe some of the ones that are challenging a little bit. Like we like to talk about where we screw up, because nobody's perfect. But maybe some that are challenging and how you're taking care of that challenge.
Yeah. So we've got one that it's been 100% for 12 straight months. As soon as someone moves out, that's pre-leased. I think partially has to do with the location. It's nestled in a neighborhood. It's also got townhome style units that are rare. They have the little sliding patio. It's got 3 bedrooms, which is also sometimes hard to find. So I think that's part of why they're staying full. But also it's requiring a lot of strong operations during this time versus if you bought something in 2019, you really didn't have to do anything. Just sell it in a couple of years there, and you're gonna be fine. I think that's not going to work if you bought something in 2022, for example.
Could you talk about, so I'm looking at strong operations as a big thing when I look at the difference in the sponsors I invested in. So if you're out there and you don't know what a sponsor is, that's kind of the general partner, the person in charge of the deal that is raising the capital from the limited partners for the transaction. And when I look at kind of, I get nerdy, it's kind of cohort analysis. Like the ones that are doing well have really strong operators with really strong property management, right? They didn't model on picking the cheapest property manager they could find. They picked the best one. So could you maybe talk about choosing an operator or a property manager if you're in the multifamily space?
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. Collections, leasing, so we used a property management company that's been doing this in DFW for about 15 years. So they have the connections here in DFW where we can pull in, vendors that immediately and at low cost, so they have the network established already. But yes, you asked also about what ones that aren't performing. I think there's one we have that we were getting a little too high, and we had to come a little bit down on our one bedrooms to stay to keep the occupancy where we wanted it.
So you had to listen to the market, right? I mean, the market say, we like the place,
exactly.
But the one bedroom we don't like it that much. That's key though, right? Because I'll tell you, as a limited partner, I would rather you produce income and like keep the place occupied than have a bunch of vacant units or even free rent is one of those things you see a lot of people throwing out. And it's like, well, yeah, free rent's great if you want to beef up your rent roll. But I mean, you just got rid of 20% of my annual income. So I don't care that you got an extra 10% on the rent that you do get to collect.
That's another thing though. When I look at new deals, the occupancy could say whatever you want it to say, but what's the economic occupancy?
Right.
What's the delinquency?